Hi, Cassie. I'm going to invite you up on stage, so give me just a second. Okay, I invited you, and you should receive a notice that you have to accept. Okay, there you are. Hi, I'm going to join you up on video as well. So give me
Great.
just a minute. Oops. All right, I always click the wrong button. All right, turn on my video. Okay, there we are. We're both up there. Hi.
Hi, good to see
So
you.
it's nice to meet you as well. So I'll just go over a few things with you before we invite anyone else to join us, but people may trickle in. The first thing, are you on your iPhone or your iPad?
I'm on my iPhone.
Okay, so the first thing to know is that you can make your images bigger, just like on a regular phone app. You can just use your fingers to drag out the images so that
Oh, okay.
you can see our video, because I always do that too.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, and I'm going to show you how to broadcast live. So you're going to go to the button in the lower, the circle in the lower left portion of your screen. It's called the hamburger. You click on that,
Okay.
and you'll see a little menu, and you hit broadcast to the world.
Okay.
And then it will give you a link at the top that you're just going to copy.
Okay. And then do I put copy like it's asking me?
Yeah, you hit copy, and then you just post that link wherever you want, whichever social media you want to
Okay.
share it.
All right. I'll do this on LinkedIn. I am not very savvy with social media.
Yeah, it's pretty simple once you get the hang of it. It's like anything, once you learn how to do it, it's simple, but learning how can be a little tricky at first.
Yeah. Okay. I don't even know how to post something. Where do I, how do I post?
Oh, see, now you've got a little globe. See your name in the virtual audience. You've got a little globe above it, which means you're broadcasting.
Um, but am I broadcasting? I haven't posted it anywhere.
Oh, okay. Maybe it turns on when you hit the broadcast button. And then you
How
just
do I?
post it. You go to your Facebook account or your LinkedIn or wherever you want to share it, and then you just copy and paste that link.
Okay. I love how you have confidence that I can do this. Okay. And then post broadcasting, post successful. Okay, here we are broadcasting on LinkedIn.
Yay.
Let me close that out and come
Okay.
back. Okay.
Yeah, wonderful. And I know that I'm gonna. My assistant will be on shortly, and she'll be broadcasting for us as well. But anybody in the audience can broadcast. So just to give you a little quick tutorial, you can click on anybody's image in the audience and learn a little bit about them, who they are. They can follow you. You can follow them. So, like, I'll go on you right now, and I'll follow you.
Okay.
That way, anytime you're on Fireside, people will get notice of that. I see Amber in the audience, so she'll be broadcasting live for us. So you see a little globe above her name that she's
Oh,
broadcasting as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and invite everybody to join us since we're almost start time.
and how long is this? Remind me.
Usually we go about 45 minutes, plus or minus, depending on how engaged the audience is. And so you'll see some people in the studio. Those are people with iPhones or iPads, but they can also join us on their computer, on our Facebook, on our profile page, and they can
Yep.
also listen in on our social media. So you won't see everybody who's in attendance, just those who have the iPhone and the iPad app.
Got it.
I see
Okay.
some people starting to join us now. So we'll give it just a minute or so more. so that we can start on time, because I like to be respectful of your time, since that's what we're talking about today, time and happiness. We want to keep everybody happy by staying on time. And I know that your mom signed up too, and she's never been on this app. So we're going to see if she's able to make it and join us as well. I hope so, because she's so excited for you.
Yeah, it's been an exciting day. Yesterday was a whirlwind, I will say.
I bet, I bet. So that was the big launch, which is very exciting.
Yeah, and I was on CBS Mornings live TV, which I've never been on national television live.
Oh, I
Um,
watched it this morning. You looked great. You were a
uh,
natural.
and I've been doing lots of stuff today, and it's it's been fun and exciting.
That's great. Well, I'm really excited to chat with you today. And I think we'll go ahead and get started. I know that there are people who still have signed up who haven't joined us yet, but they can join us as soon as they're able. And they can catch this. This auto converts to a recording after we're done. So if anybody missed anything, they can play the recording. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So hello, Firesiders. Welcome to Adventures by the Book, where our mission is to connect people and communities through the superpower of books. I'm your host, Susan Macbeth, and I'm delighted today to be hosting award-winning UCLA educator and researcher, Dr. Cassie Holmes, who is here today to talk about her new book, Happier Hour, which was
Yay!
just released yesterday. This is very exciting. Before I introduce Cassie, I'd like to welcome those of you who are in our virtual studio audience, as well as those who are tuning in on our Fireside public profile page and who are listening in on our social media channels. As I explained to Cassie earlier, anybody can actually broadcast this live. You just go to the hamburger, the little round button in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Click on broadcast to the world. It'll give you a link to copy, and you just share it with whatever platform you'd like to. And I see that Chantel is broadcasting live. Thank you, Chantel, for doing that, and Amber as well. So anybody can do that. Our approximate 45-minute chat today with Cassie is intended as a conversation, which I think is really important, especially today, given the topic that is based on your studies and research. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on the relationship between time and money from their perspective. So you can invite yourself up on stage at any time to ask questions, make a comment, or just have a chat. Or we can wait until the end of the conversation whenever you're ready to talk. Also, for those of you who have not pre-ordered a book yet, you can still do so. Happier Hour was released yesterday. You can visit our website, adventuresbythebook.com, and we can get a copy for you and ship it to you directly to the convenience of your home or whatever you would like us to deliver it. Just check out our website link in the middle of your screen in the fortune cookie button. It has our website direct link for that. As I previously mentioned, Cassie is a professor at UCLA's Anderson School of Management and has been named one of the top 40 business professors under 40. She is an expert on time and happiness, and her work has been featured on NPR, The Economist, The New York Times, Scientific American, and most recently, in the Wall Street Journal, Fortune magazine, and I don't know how many of you caught her on CBS Mornings, her first television appearance, which, by the way, she blew the socks off. She was really a natural, and I hope to see you again there. As you can see, though, I can go on and on about her accolades, but I really want to start talking about her book. And let's get started. Welcome, Cassie, and congratulations on the new book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Susan. And hello, everyone. This is a fun treat, and I have never done a fireside chat, but I am excited to talk about time and happiness with you
Well,
guys.
we're excited to talk about with you today. So let's go back a bit in time, since, well, I guess it's not too far back in time because you're still really young, but you were known as Little Miss Happiness. So tell us a little bit about your childhood, your disposition, and is there a correlation between your sunny disposition as a child and how you ended up studying time and happiness in your career choice?
Yeah, and so I was referred to as Little Miss Happiness, and I am lucky enough to be a sort of naturally happy person, and that is meaningful from a research perspective because research that's looked at what are the inputs into how happy we feel and how satisfied we are with our lives, you see actually that inherited disposition has a really big effect about the effect sizes, or I guess this audience, I'm used to speaking to my academic colleagues. You guys don't care about effect sizes, but just to say, our disposition has a big effect on how happy we feel in the day to day. Something that has that also has an effect are our circumstances, like income level, attractiveness, like these things actually that people think will have a really big effect on happiness. And I teach a course among our MBAs at Anderson at UCLA. And I spend the first 2 classes basically telling them that all these things that you think are the secret to happiness, like if only you made a lot of money, if only this and this, then you'd be happy. It actually has less of an effect than you think. But importantly, and which has driven my research, is that there's this other input, and that is what we think about and what we do in our day-to-day that has a significant influence on our happiness. And I care most about this part of the pie because this is the part that we have control over. So, well, some of us luck out with that sort of natural disposition to see the glass as half full. Circumstances will present themselves that aren't always fun and aren't always cheery. And I want everyone to be able to feel happy in their days and make choices that contribute to them. And so that's what motivated me in my research to understand what are the inputs, and in particular, what can we do? What choices can we make? How can we spend our time to enjoy greater happiness in our days and satisfaction with our lives?
So are you saying those people who were not born with a sunny disposition like you have still have a chance at happiness in their lives?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I think is so important. It has a really big effect on what we do, how we spend our time, and our mindset. And in these practices or interventions, if you will, or strategies is another way to frame it, things that we can do to train all of us, regardless of one's disposition, to practice such that anyone can feel happier. And I will also point out that the title of my book, Happier Hour, is very purposeful. It's not happy hour. It's not as something you turn on or off that you're either happy or you're not. No, there are these things that we can do to make us happier. And that's important because it's like, again, regardless of one's disposition, regardless of one's circumstances, regardless of what is happening in our days that absolutely affect how we feel, what are choices that we can make to make us happier than that?
Yeah, and I like that. And we are going to talk in a little bit about some of those things that you recommend that we can do. But I want to first talk a little bit about your journey into the world of research and the correlation between time and happiness. How did that come about? I mean, because you're just a cheerful person, you were drawn to that, or how did that come about?
Yeah, it came about because I was a PhD student at a business school, and I've spent my whole career at business schools. And I was struck by the fact that there was so much focus actually on money as the resource that was folks were focused on in terms of measuring success from a business standpoint, from a personal standpoint. And yeah, as a grad student in business school, I was recognizing that having very little time and very little money, that I actually felt that time was the resource that was most limiting, actually. So that was the thing that was the barrier to sort of all that I wanted. And this, like if only I had more time, then I could sort of achieve all that I set out to. And it's really a question of investing in ways that are worthwhile. And I was interested in the investment personally from I have a marketing PhD. So like for consumers, how are we investing our time in the products that we consume, and how does that make us feel? But in general, I started my career looking at this comparison of time versus money. And I found that those who actually are more focused on time as their critical resource are happier because they spend their time more deliberately in ways that are aligned with their values. And so that sort of propelled my research since I was a PhD student. And then I went on and joined the faculty and was a professor at Wharton's business school for many years, and continuing to do research on happiness, focusing on the role of time. And then it was within, at that point of my career, there was, which I opened the book sharing this story, where it was one of these crazy days where I was running around like a crazy person. I had, living in Philly at the time, I had been invited to give a talk in New York, and I gave the talk. It was back-to-back meetings. It was a networking dinner afterwards. And I was so focused on making the train, the very last train that would get me home to my baby and my husband in Philly. And I did make the train, but I was sitting there on the train that night. And I remember it so vividly. It's like, as the night was passing by so fast and everything, I was looking out the window and I was like, oh my gosh, things are passing by so fast. Time and life is passing. And I don't know if I can keep up between the pressures of work and wanting to be a good parent and wanting to be a good partner and a good friend and, all the chores. It just felt like there was too much to do and not enough time to do it. And that sort of led me to wonder, like, oh my gosh, if only I had more time, wouldn't I be happier? I was already focused on time for my research previously, but I realized that it was, at that point, it felt very limiting. And I was like, if only I had more time, then I'd be happier. And we tested this with data looking at, are people happier with a whole lot more time? And the answer was actually quite surprising. And it's no. Yes, people are unhappy with too little time. So the relationship that was shown in the data was a sort of arc or a rainbow. So on one side, too little time is bad. But what was surprising was actually having too much time also was associated with less happiness. And that seemed to be driven by folks feeling that they hadn't sort of accomplished something with the hours of their day. So they felt less productive and sort of a lower sense of purpose. And from that, dissatisfaction. So that led me to realize, okay, it's not about how much time one has available to spend. It is really how one spends their time. And that's what's driven my research since, is figuring out how do we invest the hours that we have to feel happier in our days, more fulfilled in our weeks, more satisfied with our lives. And that's what motivated my course and now the book.
Yeah, and I'm really interested too about the progression of age and the concept of time and happiness, because I know you talked in the Wall Street Journal article. You told a story about your son when he was entering preschool, and he literally stopped to smell the roses. And I had a similar, different story but similar outcome with my son. And when he was little, and he was going to daycare, I was always rushing him. He was eating a meal. I was like, hurry up, Greg. We need to get here. We need to get there. And one time he was eating so fast. I said, my God, Greg, slow down. You're eating too fast. And he says, you're the one always telling me to eat fast. And so I thought of your son too, as he's literally stopping to smell the roses, and we're hurrying them along. And then we want them to stop and slow down, yet we've taught them to hurry up. And I wonder if you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we're all taught to hurry up. We live in a culture that is very much driven by doing and busyness. And there is research that shows that busyness has become somewhat of a status symbol. And I know that, I know personally, there's this sort of compulsion to always be doing and sort of what's next. And in my work, which I actually think is the big aha for me, and I hope that for many, is that it is a book about time management, but historically, time management was all about efficiency, of getting more done faster. But that's actually not the goal. The goal should be, and which I absolutely promote based off of my research, is that it's about what's worthwhile, not about just what's efficient, and figuring out how can we, well, there's a sort of step of identifying what is worthwhile for you, but prioritizing those activities that are worthwhile. So you spend more time on activities that are worthwhile, less on those that feel like a waste. So it's not, again, about how much time you have. It's about investing the time you have in ways that are worthwhile. And by worthwhile, I mean those that are enjoyable and fulfilling. And so, yes, I shared that story because and it was so on the nose. It was, walking, I had worked so hard to be able to move back from Philly to Southern California, and I was in LA, and it was like a beautiful morning, and I could walk my son to preschool. And it's crazy that I was yelling at him to hurry up. We don't have time to stop and smell the roses. And it's when I heard those words that were so on the nose, like come out of my mouth. As a time and happiness researcher, I was like horrified and mortified. And I'm like, wow, this is something that is something that we have to sort of correct against, and figure out how and it's not actually so much about slowing down. It's just about not feeling so hurried and being very aware of and purposeful and intentional of when we're spending the time on these activities that are absolutely worthwhile. They are so fulfilling. Walking my son to school on a sunny day, and making sure that it's not just the activities you spend your time on that are worthwhile, but when you're spending that time, that you are present and fully engaged, so you're not missing out on those wonderful, joyous moments as they're happening in our day-to-day lives.
So true. And I was thinking as I was reading your book about cognitively where we are at in our lives when we start recognizing the concept of time. And because I was thinking about you teach this MBA course called Applying the Science of Happiness to Life Design. And I've heard it's wildly popular, but I'm wondering why you think that is, because our college students already examining this correlation between time and happiness at that young of an age?
Yeah, and I actually think it's maybe even more notable that I don't teach undergrads. I teach business MBAs. So these are folks in their late 20s, and my executive MBAs are actually in their 40s and 50s. These are folks who are very ambitious. Like they are pursuing a degree and paying money, taking themselves out of the workforce for some time to propel their careers. And even among them, that this elective has become among the most popular. And it's interesting, and I think highlights just the need that everyone realizes that they have is to figure out how to find balance. But I actually don't love that word, because it's like, it means that these things are traded off against each other, my personal life and my professional life. And I actually don't think that that's an appropriate way to view it. I think it is how we spend our time in ways that are fulfilling. And some of those are professional, some of those are outside of the professional realm. But it doesn't need to be attention. It is how we spend our time. But it does highlight. And interestingly, when I presented this course and to the curriculum committee, where I was like, all right, I had been teaching traditional marketing courses throughout my career while researching happiness and time. And I was like, I would love to teach a course on what I truly know about and care about, and the science of happiness. And initially, my colleagues or the curriculum committee was like, why does this matter? Why is this a business school course? And I made the case that we don't just care about getting our students their initial job and giving them the skills for that. We absolutely do care about that. But in addition, what we care about is their careers and them to have long careers where they don't get burnt out, where they feel fulfilled, they feel satisfied, and that they're leading teams, they're future business leaders, leading teams and supporting the emotional well-being of those on their teams. And so I did convince them that this was a worthwhile course to teach at a business school. And at this point, I mean, sadly, given the last couple of years where nobody takes happiness for granted, and especially, or not especially, in as well in the business or organizational context as we've heard about the Great Resignation. We are seeing that. We are seeing employers having a heck of a time retaining folks and recruiting folks because people are aware and care about their emotional well-being and their satisfaction with their lives overall. And so while I used to have to motivate happiness as something worth knowing about, as well as in a business context, now everyone realizes just how important it is.
Absolutely. And I know you talked a little bit already about the misconception that more time is always better. And I think during COVID, that was really, it would have been an interesting study, I'm sure you did, on we had so much more time sitting at home and not being able to go out and do our normal routine. Is there a sweet spot? How much time you need to feel happy?
Yeah, and that's a really great question. And so, as I mentioned, we did the research to look at the relationship between how much discretionary time folks have and their life satisfaction, and we saw that arc. But I mean, I think, and what the sort of graphs of our data show is that at the very extremes, you do see that there's this relationship between the amount of discretionary time you have and your happiness. And by discretionary time, we operationalized it along with what folks view as, so it includes doing nothing, sort of relaxing, watching TV, so passive leisure. It also includes active leisure, like playing sports, going to watch sports, going out to the movies, and as well as socializing. And what we saw, so we analyzed data from the American Time Use Survey, which captures for tens of thousands of working and non-working Americans how they spend a regular day. And so we could calculate how much time they spend on discretionary activities or had for discretionary activities and their happiness. And so we saw among these folks that those with less than approximately 2 hours of discretionary time, they were less happy because of stress. Those with more than approximately 5 hours of discretionary time were less happy. And that was because of that lacking sense of purpose. But between 2 and 5 hours, that's a pretty wide range. There was not a relationship between how much time or discretionary time you had and happiness. And there it goes to show that, I mean, one could say that's the sweet spot, but it's only sweet if you're spending that time in ways that are fulfilling. And I mean, additionally, looking at those that had a lot of time, and we saw that sort of drop off in happiness, I will note that in the data, those who spent their discretionary time on activities that felt worthwhile for them, so on hobbies that were enriching or on more sort of productive or active leisure where it gave them a sense of fulfillment or social connection in a way that felt really genuine and engaging, you actually didn't see this drop off. So again, I think that a really important note is that it's not how much time you have to spend in particular ways. It's really whether you're spending that time on activities that feel worthwhile. And again, by worthwhile, I mean those that feel happy and fulfilling, less time on ways that feel wasteful, so that even if you're busy, like I still have kids. Now I don't only have one baby. I have 2 children who are a little older. I still am working. I still have a partner who I want to be a good partner for, friends that I want to be good friends for, and still have chores. But the difference is, instead of that night on the train where I felt depleted and overwhelmed and unhappy, it's actually I've reinvested, or I've been very deliberate in spending my time on ways that are totally fulfilling and worthwhile. So at the end of the day, it's not that I'm depleted and exhausted. It is that I feel fulfilled and therefore excited for the next day. And that's just as relevant for those who have a lot of discretionary time, so to speak. But if you're spending that time in ways that feel worthwhile, on enriching activities that make you feel full, on volunteer work that make you feel impactful, with the ones you love that make you feel connected, then you also see this positive, looking back on the day, feeling fulfilled and excited for the next.
And do you think this is global? Do you think this is unique to us Americans? Do you think this is global?
Yeah, you mean that sort of busyness? So, and that drive towards doing and
Yeah.
being busy. It's a good question, and there is data that suggests so. This feeling of having too much to do and not enough time to do it is felt around the world. And the interesting thing is, we are trying to figure out how can we study. So I've done a national poll within the US, finding that almost half of Americans feel like they don't have enough time to do all that they want to do. There isn't great data yet to compare with the proportion of people that feel that way in different cultures and countries. And so I'm excited about the potential of doing this work. But there is certainly, I have hypotheses about how that will play out, because there are, the US is a country that is sort of based off of the Protestant work ethic, which is very much doing and working hard, often at the sacrifice of enjoyment along the way. And the potential consequence of that is that folks miss out on the joys along the way. If you're always sort of like, later, I will find enjoyment. And what you see in the research, as well as in some interviews that folks do of folks who are sort of reflecting back on their life, it is that regret from missing out on joys and experiencing happiness and investing in those relationships over the course of life, as opposed to sort of waiting until retirement. Then I will, invest in the things that I care about. But that's leading to potential disappointment and regret.
For sure. And you talk about retirement. So does the meaning of happiness change over the course of a lifetime?
Yeah, and it does. And we've looked at that of initially, the data set was really interesting. It was looking at what people posted, like in the blogosphere. So before social media, where we were, posting in this way, blogs, and we analyzed in millions of posts of anytime someone wrote, "I feel" or "I'm feeling happy." We analyzed that, and what we found was that younger people, that there were sort of two clusters of happiness. There was the excited, anticipating, sort of loud happiness, and then there was the calm contentment, serenity. And what was interesting is that we found that younger people were more likely to express the excited happiness. As people get older, it's more about this sort of calm contentment. And in other work, we looked at the happiness from extraordinary and ordinary experiences. And we found that young people tended to feel greater happiness from extraordinary experiences, these sort of exciting, like once in a lifetime vacations and going out to concerts and, the excitement. And while older people also felt happiness from this extraordinary, you saw that as people got older, they felt increasing happiness from ordinary moments, the sort of simple moments in the day to day, that contentment. And I frame it as actually savoring, recognizing that time, their time in life is limited. And as folks get older, they tend to recognize that more. And as a consequence, savor all of their moments more. But what we also found in the research is that you can lead even young people to recognize that their time in life is limited, and which pushes them to savor those ordinary experiences more. And I would actually say that the last couple of years with the pandemic have reminded all of us, no matter how old we are, that our time in life is finite, that our time is precious. And I think all of us have become more attentive to those simple, ordinary moments and really soaking them up and appreciating them.
Agreed, agreed. So your book not only offers empirical based insights, but it's also easy to implement tools for a happier life. So can you share some of those tools that we can all use?
Yeah, and so I share strategies or exercises along over the course of the book, and these are assignments that I've actually given my students, and they're based off of empirics. And so by reading Happier Hour, it's basically like you're taking my course. But there's a bunch of exercises. Some of them are about helping you identify for yourself what are those worthwhile ways of spending time or investing time. For instance, a time tracking exercise, which is very helpful. So over the course of a week, writing down and keeping track on what activities are you spending your time on, but also important, how are you feeling from having spent your time on that activity? How does that activity make you feel? And that what that gives you is this wonderful personalized data set that you can pull out and identify those activities in your weeks that really bring you joy, as well as those that are not so happy. And you can also see just how much time you're spending on those activities. So time tracking. There's also more in terms of identification of what's important. There's the 5 whys exercise, which allows or sort of leads you to dig into what's your purpose, like what ultimately drives you, reflecting back on moments of joy. Then there are exercises that encourage you to spend time on activities that have been empirically shown to be mood boosters, exercise being one of them. Getting enough sleep actually has really proven positive effects. Obviously, you can't assess if you're happy while sleeping, but certainly it affects how you feel over the course of the rest of your day. Acts of kindness. So research shows that when we do nice things for others, it makes us feel happier. And then there are activities, and I'm just sort of scratching the surface, exercises. There are also exercises that do encourage folks or you to take a broader perspective of your time. And so our hours, how we spend our hours, sum up to our days, our years, and ultimately our life. And by thinking about our time in terms of years and our overall life, it really clarifies what is important, what does matter. And so there's an exercise that has you write your eulogy. For some, that sounds very anxiety producing, but basically, how do you want to be remembered? And by thinking about the life that you want to live and what matters to you, the 5 whys actually also speaks to this of like what ultimately drives you. That can inform how you spend your next hour. And then there's also, I mean, there's so many exercises that I love so much. One of my favorites is actually identifying someone whom you really admire, who is closer to the end of their life. So as we're trying to make decisions about how we should be spending our time and choices that we should be making, there are folks who have lived a full life and they're quite satisfied, and we have a lot to learn from them. So pick someone in your life who, from your perspective, has done it right. They've lived a good, full, happy life, and ask them, what is their greatest source of pride? What is their greatest source of regret? And from that, not only do you have an increased sense of connection with this person, but there's some really important learnings that then we can implement, again, like in our upcoming hours of how we should be investing
I'm
ourselves.
so glad you brought that up because I think in our culture we don't appreciate our senior citizens and all the wisdom and tips that they can offer us because they've been through everything in their lifetimes.
Yeah, and they have the perspective that we can learn a lot from. And it's interesting because in having had my students do this exercise, and I've sort of collapsed their takeaways. They're like, what is the greatest source of pride? I see that across the folks whom are interviewed, many of whom are very professionally accomplished, because they're picking that person whom they idolize, and these are business school students, so they like idolize very accomplished people. But there, 75% of these folks whom are interviewed, what is your greatest source of pride? And it is family. It is those relationships that they have cultivated. What is their greatest source of regret? Not spending enough time with family. And I think that this is learning that's very much in line. Actually, there's a longitudinal study that followed a cohort of starting as sort of young men. They were in their early 20s over the course of their life, and they would check in with them and ask, what are you doing? How are you doing? And after 75 years of this study, what they found was the biggest predictor of life satisfaction was not money, nor was it fame. It was whether they had strong relationships. And so I think that there is a lot of insight. I mean, whether it's through time tracking, whether it's through interviewing an elder, whether it's through writing one's own eulogy, there's a lot of indication that what does matter, and in the psychology research, which I cover quite a bit in the book, is that it is about people. It's about the relationships that we have, and making sure that in the busy lives that we have is creating time to cultivate those relationships, to be with those people whom we love so much. And it's not just about spending the time on those activities, but it's also being engaged during that time. Because another thing that in terms of culture, not just in terms of culture, but the sort of realities of current day, is that we have these wonderful smartphones, and they are so smart, and they are always with us. And what they help us do a lot, but they also distract us constantly from what we are currently doing. And so making sure that if you're going to be spending your time on an activity that feels really happy and fulfilling, making sure that you're not being distracted during that time so that you don't miss out on the potential happiness from spending your time in that way.
Absolutely. And your book gives such great tips on how to do that happier hour, which you can purchase on our website, adventuresbythebook.com, or at your favorite bookseller. But there's all kinds of juicy tidbits that you can use. It's like taking her whole course. All you have to do is buy the book, read the book, and it's like taking her entire course at UCLA. So it's a great read for some quality input into your lives, how to manage it better with your time and happiness. And I want to leave time for audience questions. So those of you who are in our virtual audience, if you have questions or comments, thoughts about the correlation between time and happiness, anything that Cassie's talked about or not talked about today, feel free to invite yourself up on stage. And for those of you who are new to the platform, you just click on that little hamburger circular button in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. and there's a place that says invite to stage, and you just click on that. You can come up on stage with us and ask your questions. And I know last week Amber had some great questions, and I didn't see her in the audience, so I'm going to start with her. Amber, if you had any questions and wanted to, here's your time to do that.
Hi, Cassie. It's Amber. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Okay. Hi, it's so nice to meet you. First of all, I've been waiting for a book like this for so long. Here, I'll go on screen so that you guys can see me. Hi.
Hey.
And
Hi.
I have so many to-do lists, and like I feel like I'm really horrible at time management, and I'm always trying to do three things at the same time. But I'm curious that since you are a professor and you're kind of teaching these things to your students, what has been the response from your students? Because I just recently graduated from college, and I'm just curious, like, what is the mindset of my generation in response to this research? What are they saying about it, and do you have any advice for someone my age?
Yeah. Well, it is needed and wanted by folks your age as well as many ages. And I think that's something helpful, even which sort of was shown in the way you asked the question, and which I encourage my students to sort of shift it, is that time management, oftentimes in other books and sort of like traditionally, it's been all about efficiency. How can I get more done faster? And I actually don't think that that should be the goal of how we invest our time. It's not about efficiency. It's actually about spending time in ways that are worthwhile, and not just on ways that are worthwhile, but really making that time that you're spending worthwhile. And so and in Happier Hour, there are some sort of tools to try to sort of push back against this urgency and efficiency as our sort of and simply productivity to get things done, and instead carving out and creating time and prioritizing time and protecting time for these really worthwhile things, such that you get the most out of that time. So don't, again, shift away from efficiency and think about what's worthwhile as you're investing.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's great advice. Thank you, Cassie. Great question, Amber. And just a reminder that anyone else can join us on stage as our time is winding out. We want to give you the opportunity to share your thoughts with Cassie. But as we're nearing the end of our conversation, I think it's appropriate timing to talk about what you call your eulogy exercise. And I'm wondering, did I read that correctly? A eulogy exercise? What is that, and how can we use it to make us happier?
Yeah, and I alluded to that before when I was talking about the exercises. And it is basically what I encourage and I assign my students to do is think back, sort of project forward to the end of your life. How do you want to be remembered? What is the life that you want to, like a eulogy is, what someone says about you on your passing. And in writing it, it's very clarifying of the life that you want to live, your values of what matters to you. And I will also say that I have had some students who are like, this is too anxiety provoking. And one student was like, actually like a very conscientious student. She's like, I am sorry, I cannot do this assignment and I'm willing to forfeit my grade. And then I was like, don't worry. Here's your other assignment, and it's write, tell me about the life that you want to live. Because actually what the eulogy assignment, it's exactly the same assignment. Notably, it's not an exercise about death. It's about the life that you want to live. And as you play that out and see, how do I want to be remembered? How do I want to be described? What do I want this life to be? Taking that broad perspective of time informs how we should be spending our hours. And so that, again, actually is touching back to the title of the book, happier, because it's not about happy or not. It's about what you can do to be happier. And it's our, because the life that we want to live all starts with how we spend our hours. And so that's the idea of that assignment.
That's great. And I know we're closing out our time, so last call for questions, or you're going to lose your chance to speak with the happiness expert. So is there anything we haven't chatted about it that you wanted to mention? Any upcoming events, any future research, anything about the book we haven't talked about, anything you'd like to share?
I'm just really excited that the book is finally out in the world. This is, while I've been doing this research for a dozen years at this point, I actually think that it is very timely. I think that there is great appetite. I mean, Amber was saying she's been waiting for a book like this, but I think so many of us are trying to figure out, how do we invest the time that we have, that we now are all reminded is so precious, in ways that feel fulfilling. And I'm just so excited that this book is sort of entering into the world so that more people can apply these empirically based insights to be happier. And I'm thrilled. And I know that we will be doing with Adventures by the Book an event in San Diego next week. And I am doing talks virtually and in person throughout the next few months. And I'm just really excited. And it's such a treat to spend the time with you all this evening. I'm saying evening because I'm in New York right now. So.
Yeah, I think it's an important book too, and I'm so glad you've written it, especially given your background and the research tools that you have that we don't have. I think it's really, really important and worthwhile. So thank you. For those of you who are not familiar with Cassie, or even if you are, where can we find you on social media?
I am not very on social media because of what I talk about in the book. But my website, www.cassiemholmes.com, shares, that's where you can find out sort of everything about my research and where I am. And I am on LinkedIn, but I actually think that the book is the reason I wrote it, is so that the conversation can be had without me there. So Happier Hour, buy it and read it and share it, or you can listen to it. It's an audiobook as well. And share it, your learning, so that we can spread happiness, make people happier.
I know, and you think that the holidays are so far away, but they're actually coming up, and it make a great gift to bring the awareness of happiness to people in your lives, your loved ones. You can also click on Cassie's icon and follow her, so that anytime she's on Fireside, you will get notice and you can come back and talk with her. And I hope that you will do that, Cassie. You can also click on my icon. We interview authors every week, and this week we're doing 2. So it's a bit crazy week, but tomorrow we will be chatting part 5 of our 6-part series, Fall into Reading. Each week we're talking with a different author about a different book to give you some ideas for your fall reading list. And I see in our audience, Carol Van Den Hende is in the audience. She is going to be our featured author tomorrow, so I hope you come back and join us. As Cassie mentioned, if you're going to be in the San Diego area on September 15th, we are going to do, of course, a happy hour event, because what's more fun than talking to her about happiness than talking and drinking and talking about happiness. So I hope if you're in the San Diego area, you'll be able to join us there. And I think that's pretty much it. If you're not familiar with Adventures by the Book, as you know, we do our fireside chats. We also do Zoom events, in-person events, travel around the world with authors. We have a whole array of services. So check our website out, adventuresbythebook.com. And one final shout out, Happier Hour, available as of yesterday at your favorite bookseller or at our adventuresbythebook.com website. And I wish you best of luck. I think it's an amazing gift to the world, and we're so glad you were here to share it with us today. Thank you, Cassie. Thanks to those of you who are in our virtual audience, whether it's live on stage or in our social media channels or on our profile page. So thank you, everybody. Take the time to be happy and have a happier hour with your life. Thank you, Cassie.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
This is an important message from Southern California Edison. This heat wave is on track to be both the hottest and longest on record in California for September. Your energy conservation is still needed to help maintain power for everyone. Please conserve energy today after 4 p.m. to reduce the need for road